Paul, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So you are, when it comes to, the political world, you're a very knowledgeable man. You're a historian, an author, a research professor. What brings you to Romania for this election?
Right now, Romania is where everything's happening in terms of the struggle over values that are going to define Europe going forward, which we see mirrored in what's happened in the United States in the last 10 years, not just the last 1 year. The broader struggle between how you define what democracy is, how you define populism, whether it is a dirty word or a pejorative, or whether it means of the people, which is what the word means. How you define nationalism, whether love of nation is a positive thing or a negative thing, or can be a mix of both, which is what I argue in my book that I published in Italy. And you can see the passions that this election are bringing out here in Romania, right? You've seen that with how they responded to Callum Georgescu's cancellation, whether it should have been canceled or not, whether the legitimate reasons for it or not, in terms of the intelligence that they have not made public, is almost irrelevant to the fact that the perception broadly in Romanian society is that he has been the victim of lawfare. And even Romanians that were not sympathetic to him before suddenly are, because they see the establishment as being corruptly defending its own privileged position, which is anti-democratic by definition. And so even if Callum Georgescu actually, and from a moral point of view or a political common sense point of view, should not be present in Romania, the way that it was done has caused a real roiling of the waters here. And George Simeon is benefiting from that to a degree, but he's also, I think, reflecting, it seems clear to me, the aspirations of grassroots Romanians. Because the AUR, the R party, as you know, AUR, the Alliance for Uniting Romanians, started really as a movement in 2019. It's not really to become a political party, but it was a grassroots movement reflecting the sense that the elites in Bucharest are not really representing our interests, which is something that is seen all through Europe, through the United States and Canada. It's everywhere throughout the West and much of the world. It's a common theme.
It's interesting that you mentioned Callum Georgescu there, because a lot of the everyday Romanians that I've spoken to, the votes kind of speak for themselves. Yeah. He was the most popular person, right. But a lot of people who are now more interested in this election than in previous elections are all saying the same thing, that we don't really know what he's accused of, but we know that something isn't right about how it's been dealt with.
Exactly.
So it seems to it's revolutionized a populace. What sort of things have you found? Because you've been in the country for about a month now.
Yeah.
What sort of things are you finding with the everyday Romanians?
Well, I've talked to a lot of everyday Romanians, as you have, and traveled quite a bit through the country over the last month, and they say exactly what you're saying. They're just frustrated. I hung out last week in a bar in a small little Romanian town in the mountain village that I won't name. A bar of about a dozen old guys that just sit around and talk politics and stuff all day long. And, this is a town that basically we would describe as a redneck town in the United States. This would be like a West Virginia, Arkansas sort of town, like God-fearing, down-home, traditional people. Loved them. And they weren't dumb as the elites would kind of cast them as. They knew exactly what was going on in the world. In fact, they knew who I was. I walked into the bar, and the oldest of the old guys who told the tallest fish tales, he pulled me right up on his mobile phone and said, in Romanian, this is you. This is you in Washington. This is you. He had my whole bio, and they know exactly what's going on. They're tracking this election, and they're feeling disenfranchised. And again, even if they didn't support Georgescu, that's really not the point, as you pointed out. The point is they need to know that the institutions here are representing them, and they don't feel that they are. So that's what I've heard repeatedly. So whether it's in the north in Transylvania, whether it's in the southwest around the Serbian border, whether it's around Bucharest, I hear this again and again and again, that they need to know that Romania's governing institutions are looking after their interests, and they don't feel that's the case. And again, you hear that in France, you hear that in the Netherlands, you hear that in Germany, in Poland, anywhere you go in the EU, you hear that.
So why Romania? I mean, outside of the political world, no one would see Romania as almost like, the country's kind of been spoken of like it's a kingmaker.
Mm.
How has Romania found itself in such a politically important position?
Yeah, that's a great question. Romania, I think I would label it as kind of a forgotten ally in normal times because it's just kind of in the back of our heads. It's an ally. It's part of NATO. It's part of the EU, but nobody seems really gives it enough attention or much attention. Um, this country, 19 million people, so it's not huge, but it's not negligible either. Croatia, for example, has 4, so it's much bigger than some of its neighbors. But Romania is strategically super important, as you know. I mean, it's right on the Black Sea. The Black Sea is a major fulcrum of geopolitical contention, and has been for millennia, and is still today. Romania has the longest border of any EU or NATO ally with Ukraine. So Romania could be used as a major jumping off point and platform for rebuilding Ukraine economically once war, God willing, ceases and we get a peace deal, whatever it may look like. Romania is very important as the southeastern flank of NATO, and in so many other ways as a center for natural gas, for oil, critical minerals, agricultural possibilities here. There's a lot of arable land that's not being used. It could be a breadbasket of Europe, and that's especially important when Ukraine's food production has dropped so dramatically because of the war. So Romania has a lot of things that make it important. I guess to answer your question more directly, what has made it the center of attention now is this fight right now over norms and values and what's going to define what democracy is going forward. We hear, for example, Donald Tusk in Poland and Ursula von der Leyen and others telling us that democracy is what they represent, when what I'm seeing them doing is I see them censoring content online that they disagree with. I see them literally putting people in prison like Donald Tusk has done in Poland that are from the opposing party, from Law and Justice. He's with Civic Platform, as you know. And we see this again and again through Europe. And that same battle is being fought here. So basically, this is a fight over what is democracy. How do you truly represent your people's interests? And the Romanian people are really fed up. And so, I told you earlier before we started recording that I just talked a couple of hours ago to Romania's top pollster, and he tells me he's expecting very high turnout this weekend, about 64%, he thinks, and people are motivated.
It's interesting that you mentioned the turnout there, because that's one of the things when I've spoken to voters, no one's talking economic policy, no one's talking foreign policy, no one's talking about education, health. This election almost seems to be a referendum on how they think the 2024 election was dealt with.
Yeah.
Is that what you're seeing?
To a large degree, yes. I mean, the 2024 election was also about issues that we've just sketched out. And so a lot of that is baked into this election as well. It's about sovereignty. It's about the people's choice, of course, which is about what the cancellation was addressing. It's about, freedom of speech. It's about democracy. It's a kind of a referendum on how the EU is structured as well. Do the Romanian people feel that the EU is beneficial to them? Polls show that they do. From a financial point of view, funds that come here for infrastructure and that sort of thing are welcomed. But on the other hand, some of the values that the EU pushes onto Romania that we've just sketched out, the restrictions on free speech, the censorship, those sorts of things, the anti-democratic values, those are resented. And so it seems to me, getting back to a question you asked 2 or 3 questions ago, what am I hearing for the Romanian people? It's that they want to be a member of the EU. They don't want to leave it, but they do want an EU that is more reflective of their values, that's more honoring of the sense of tradition and family and sovereignty and the importance that all nations and citizens of those nations, most of them, place on national identity. Are you a citizen of the world, or are you a citizen of Romania, of Hungary, of Poland, etc.? And I think people still value those, what are dismissed easily by the Western elites as tribal connections. All of us, I think, are hardwired sociologically and anthropologically to attach ourselves to a tribe. And that's not a bad thing. That can be a tribe can be a very good thing. It all depends on how you shape it. So all of that is baked into what this election means from what I've been hearing from Romanians I've been talking to.
And speaking of the European Union, I mean, they're not even hiding the fact that they're interfering with this. I mean, it's quite rich that they talk about democracy and things like this, yet,
That's right. Well, they censor.
Thierry Breton was speaking on a French TV show about how, and he was a former EU commissioner, how it was French European Union officials that basically came over here to the Electoral Bureau and said, yeah, that guy who's the favourite, not him.
That's right.
And now they're almost going for Simeon. I mean, they're being a little bit more discreet, I think, this time with this candidate. But it's still pretty clear that they are not keen on, Nika Jordan is definitely the European Union's man. That's who they want.
Correct.
Why do they fear both Călin Georgescu and George Simeon so much?
Well, it seems pretty clear based upon the values, the conflict over values that we've just been talking about. The EU seems pretty clearly to fear people power. They actually claim to defend democracy, but when democracy goes into action and the people vote the way they don't want them to, they really don't like it. And that tells me that they're really about defending their own monopoly and political power, not about what's best for the people. So that's why they fear it. They fear that George Simeon, if he's elected, I think would represent national sovereignty first, would represent what the common Romanian wants, and would not necessarily represent what's in the best interest of Brussels. And that's going to continue to be a major chasm between. It's going to be a major thing that undermines popular support throughout the EU for the EU as a political experiment until the EU reshapes, if and when, I'm doubtful that it ever will, reshapes itself to be more aligned with the values of grassroots people, whether they're in Romania, in Poland, in Italy, or wherever it is.
And finally, I'm a long way from home, but you're even further from home.
That's right.
Why is there so much American interest here? Because it's not just political American interest here. There is business interest over here. Why is that? Why now?
Well, Romania, first of all, the business interest, because I talked a little bit about energy. Romania is potentially a huge energy supplier to all of Europe and potentially beyond. Lots of critical minerals possibilities there. There are hurdles to get past to get at those, governmental, regulatory, et cetera. But there's also the arable land. There's also industry that's trying to get started here. The defense industry here, actually, under the communists, was one of the top 10 exporters of defense equipment through the whole world. After 1989, that shriveled and died. But there's a lot of really innovative thinkers here, engineers. I visited a friend of mine who's a professor at Bucharest Polytechnic a couple of days ago. She's in her 70s. She's been there for quite a while. She was telling me the incredibly innovative ideas that her PhD students are coming up with for dual use tech, both civilian, commercial, and for defense use. All of this, I think, could be really good investments for American investors and for British and other investors. So I'm talking to friends of mine in the US and the UK that can invest and help get these industries going here. Because I think that's another example of how we build up sovereignty here. If we can get, as one example, a homegrown defense industry going, get more industry going here, production here, agricultural production here, rather than shipping in all their foodstuffs from Turkey or wherever, I think that's on the whole a good thing, and that'll help develop Romania in a more positive direction, lead to more job creation, et cetera, et cetera. So to your question as to why now, it's because now is when we're fighting over those political issues and those normative issues, those moral issues. This is coming of course, on the heels, as you know, of Donald Trump's reelection. I'm sure you know that this is only the second time in American history that a president has been reelected to non-consecutive terms. That's a historically big deal. When that happens, you have to sit up and take notice and ask yourself why.
It Grover Cleveland? Was that
very good for Brit? I'm impressed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're right, Grover Cleveland.
And so Simeon has said he is the Trumpist candidate.
Yeah.
Do you think a Simeon Romania will help Trump when it comes to resolving the Ukraine-Russia crisis? And do you think actually it will strengthen his hand?
Whether it will help, there's a lot of moving parts to that question. I'm not sure. Whether it will strengthen his hand, definitely. Because right now, as you know, we've got a Brussels that really cannot stand Donald Trump. And they're treating him as if he's the reincarnation of Adolf Hitler, basically, in a way that I think is just way over the top and counterproductive, and means that it's just deepening the transatlantic divide, that we need to work to make sure that we've got close transatlantic relations. I think that's important. So having allies here in this part of the world, whether that's in Poland, Hungary, Romania, Italy, Czechia, Slovakia, wherever, with whom the Trump administration can work closely to develop close trade ties, can check the expansion of Chinese influence throughout Europe, Russian, et cetera. That's a really, really good thing. And to do that, we need to have people that are willing to work with Donald Trump. And George Simeon appears to be that guy. So yes, I think it'd be very good for Trump, for the United States, and it would definitely strengthen America's position here and ability to counteract these totalitarian powers like Beijing that are really seeking to divide America and Europe to expand their influence here and push America out. So we just can't let that happen. So I think an election of George Simeon would be a very positive thing from that perspective.
Thank you very much,
You're
Paul.
welcome. Glad to be here.